I mean, some of the attacks on Russia were coordinated by U.S. military personnel in Ukraine. The Ukrainian government is supported wholly by the United States. Our intel agencies and our intel officers are in Ukraine directing the Ukrainian intel service. So these are all facts. So like, we are at war with Russia, but why? And why the hatred?
I think that's a brilliant question. Why? Maybe it goes back to looking at George Soros and I think an essay that he wrote in the 1990s about this, because he's been largely involved in his Open Society project, which is the destruction of Russia.
Yes.
So the destruction of Russia is meant to enable the expansion of the United States, militarily and economically. We need to destroy Russia. We need to destroy China, according to George Soros, in order for that expansion. So George Soros intimately involved with the expansion of NATO, using Slavic people, not Americans, to die on behalf of George Soros and NGOs like USAID and others to have this massive change. So Adam Schiff said it publicly on the House floor, for crying out loud. I mean, I played that clip a million times. They die over there, so we don't have to. We fight them over there, so we don't have to fight them here. It's the same thing. I don't know if you saw Eric Swalwell last week, for crying out loud. He said this is the greatest investment we've ever made. Meaning, and he said 0 Americans have died, which is a lie, by the way, because there's actually been a number of Americans that have died fighting Russia in Ukraine.
Well, a bunch of Americans have died.
It'd be interesting to see finally when those families have been told to sign NDAs and not speak about it. I know for a fact that Americans have died in Ukraine fighting Russia.
Of course, some of it's on camera, by the way.
Yeah, but they'll deny it. They'll say that these were just mercenaries. They weren't tied to it. They're just, they were there voluntarily, like the guy who tried to kill Trump in Mar-a-Lago. Like, these are just, we have no control over these people. That's total bullshit. Of course you have control over these people.
Well, you could, very easily say that, and we probably should say that no American is allowed to serve in a foreign military. I don't understand. We have a person serving on the National Security Council right now who served in the Ministry of Defense in a foreign country. Like, no? How about no?
Right.
You're not allowed to have multiple citizenships. You're not allowed to serve in a foreign military? What? If that's not disloyal, I don't know what is. We have a military. We have all kinds of clear and present threats. Basically because the people serving in foreign militaries, encouraged us to get involved in all this crap. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
We could clearly shut that down, and we haven't. You made reference to NDAs. Do you think that people have been pushed to sign NDAs?
Oh, for sure. The families of those who have fallen, specifically in Ukraine. I wonder how many people. I wonder if we're talking, President Trump, transparency. How many Americans have died in Ukraine fighting Russia, and then how many families of those special forces or just NATO soldiers have had to sign NDAs about their service there.
That's wild. I never even thought of that.
I've had former members of the CIA tell me that. High-ranking members of the military tell me that. So I would like to know. Maybe the Trump administration can pull these numbers out and we can hear more about that. How many Americans have died? Because we know French, Polish more than anyone, dying in Ukraine. Talk about a country that's been destroyed.
I was about to say, I hate to say it, but the Poles, who I think are great people for the record, never met a Pole I didn't like, except for Ann Applebaum's husband. But boy, they always end up bearing the brunt of everything in Europe.
Yeah, and massive NATO bases, a flood of refugees that have completely changed their country. Millions of Ukrainian refugees have poured across the border that they just welcomed in with open arms. The language totally changed in neighborhoods across Poland. So instead of speaking Polish, you're just hearing Ukrainian now through these neighborhoods. Completely changed that. So when I look at the project and going back, go back to the 90s, go back just a few years to 2014, I've seen this awakening, or at least an awareness over the past week, once Trump and J.D. Vance dressed down Zelensky in the Oval Office to say, because Zelensky lied right to their faces multiple times that Putin violated our exchange of prisoners. He violated the Minsk agreements. Well, to anyone sitting there saying, oh, really? Oh, so Putin's the bad guy. He's the one who violated the prisoner swap. Really, No. So when you start looking at it, no, that's not at all what happened. Zelensky lied right to Trump's face, right to Zelensky's face, that Putin violated the prisoner exchange in 2019. That's total bullshit. Total BS. In fact, Zelensky's on camera welcoming the prisoners back at a ceremony. I think it was in Paris in 2019. So Putin didn't violate that at all. In fact, he adhered to it. Same with the Minsk agreements, which we know Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany at the time, joked later that they were never going to adhere to the Minsk agreements to provide peace and stick with that. Instead, they carried out a genocide in eastern Ukraine, what was eastern Ukraine, for 10 years.
Time for another true life Alp story. I got a call from a friend of mine yesterday, honestly, true story, who said his girlfriend had just broken up with him over Alp. He wouldn't stop. And I thought to myself, that's kind of sad. And he said, no, it's not sad. Imagine if I'd married her. Now I know I was saved. Then the next day, this same friend is driving at twice the speed limit through a major American city, pulled over by a cop in a speed trap. Cop takes his license registration, goes back to the patrol car, runs him, comes back, looks in the window and sees a tin of Alp on the dashboard. Pauses, stunned, says to my friend, "You use Alp?" "Yeah, I do," says my friend. "So do I," says the cop. "We all do." He looks at my friend thoughtfully and goes, "Drive safely, sir," and hands back his license and registration. No ticket. So in 2 days, he's saved from a tragic marriage to a girl who doesn't like Alp and a speeding ticket. All true. It's more than a nicotine marriage. In a nation of 350 million people, we're guessing there are about 350 million Alp stories. Email us yours. We want to know and read it on the air. Email tellall@alppouch.com. Tellall@alppouch.com. Give us your Alp story.
No one wants to talk about the civilians that were killed. This infuriates me at a level. Just picture a child in Donbas or Donetsk or Luhansk walking to school, and they go through a park and they pick up one of these petal mines. Have you seen these petal mines?
Yes.
These green, they look like a leaf. Journalist Eva Bartlett has done unbelievable work on this. But these kids, they're meant to look. So the kids walk up to them and they pick them up and their hands blow off. That's what these civilians have been dealing with in Donbas and Donetsk, in Luhansk for 10 years. So ethnic Russians living in those areas. So when people say, "Oh, this thing started when Putin invaded," okay, yes, I'm very anti-war, so I always feel like yes, there's probably a way to solve it without killing people. So in that, I'll give you that. Putin maybe didn't need to invade in order to, and he didn't want to. By the way, he didn't want to. His government, his parliament voted for it. He didn't want to. So to go into eastern Ukraine, in Donbas, in Donetsk, and Luhansk, set up areas and protect those ethnic Russians who were being slaughtered for the past 10 years. And it was the United States, it was NATO, it was Boris Johnson, it was all of those clowns pushing NATO right up to that doorstep and coordinating these attacks. I mean, the CIA, the New York Times did a whole profile on how CIA basically runs Ukraine. Multiple field offices. So the coup that took place in 2014, I know you've spoken at length about this, you know all about it. I know your audience is well educated, they know all about it. But this was a CIA-backed coup in 2014. We installed a Western puppet government in Ukraine after the Maidan coup to do our bidding. So I have some empathy for Zelensky, and I'll tell you why. Because here's a guy who's sitting in the White House, and I feel like he doesn't know. First of all, he's not in power, and he's wondering, okay, I just got off the phone with Victoria Nuland and Susan Rice before I walked in here.
Exactly. And a bunch of low IQ Republican senator warmonger freaks.
Yeah, so probably Lindsey Graham got on the phone with him.
100% Mike Rounds and all these people. Yeah.
And they're like, "Hey, Vladimir, I've been to Ukraine many, many times. We've been funneling money and weapons to you for a long time. Here's what you need to do. You need to play hardball with Trump.
Exactly.
When you get in there, you need to tell him we need security guarantees. Trump loves a little confrontation, so just do that. Make sure." And I don't know if you know it, around the 34-minute mark in that confrontation, some little lackey from his staff leans over and gives him like marching orders.
No.
So around the 34-minute mark, we did a thing about it like a couple of weeks ago. He leans over, I think it was a female, male, I forget. Anyway, leans over right to Zelensky and says something, you know, like for like a minute, is like guiding him, like, you know.
Wow.
And then stuff hits the fan. Like, hey, remember that meeting you had with, I'm just speculating. Remember that meeting you had with Victoria Nuland yesterday when you got, just on the Susan Rice phone call, like just remember we talked about security guarantees. Right after that, fireworks.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.